When your business is growing fast and you're scaling, what do you do so your business doesn't fall apart? How do you manage employees? How do you manage products? How do you manage the whole system involved with a business that's growing maybe even too fast for its own good? Today, we're going to be discussing how to manage scaling and how to do so your business can still thrive and your clients are happy. Welcome to Thriving Launch with Luis Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business.
Do you have a product or service that you would like to sell online? Or maybe you've been thinking about it, but you're reserved to do it because you need a website, you need complicated systems, and you need to spend money? Well, I've created a completely free course that teaches you how to use Facebook in a purely organic way. This means no ads and no money are needed. You can use Facebook completely free. So head on over to thrivinglaunch.com, opt into my Profit from Social Media course. I'm going to teach you the free methods to using Facebook to make money today.
On this episode, we've got Ashley Stahl. She is an American national security professional turned entrepreneur, speaker, and career coach. She coaches millennials on how to find their purpose, master the job hunt, and eventually transition into entrepreneurship.
All right, welcome Thriving Launchers. We have Ashley Stahl here. Ashley, are you ready to launch?
I am ready to launch.
I love it. So, one of the things that you've done, and you've done in a really dynamic and powerful way, is you shifted out of the 9 to 5 working for government to having your own business. And then in just this like dynamite, explosive kind of way, you just grew this business insanely fast. And there's some dangers to that. I mean, when I hear people growing a business very quickly, like overnight, I start thinking, man, this person's going to bomb. Like, this is like winning the lottery. In a few years from now, they could be back to zero because they're growing so quickly. And I know that you have some tips and you've had to do some work in order to even slow down some of the scaling. What have you been learning through this process?
Oh my gosh. And you're so accurate because I really do see that. I think that there's so many people who dream about the cash flow. They dream about what could happen in their life, the impact they can make on their customers. And they stop thinking, well, what do I need to do right now? And I think the first thing to remember when you're scaling your business is to always be 10 steps ahead. If you focus too much on the now, you're going to miss certain steps that you've got to take. That could be thinking about where your niche is going. For example, I help job seekers with my online program, but at the end of the day, I can't just focus on the job hunt right now, because by the time I scale it up to where I want it to be this year, the program is going to be irrelevant unless I'm really focusing on 10 steps ahead, not just on the quality of the product, but where my niche is going and what my customer is going to be wanting. And, on top of that, I think one of the biggest things to really focus on also is your integrity, because I think when you have the opportunity to really blow up your business, it can be common to really kind of overlook, well, what kind of steps do I need to take to make sure that I'm in the clear? How can I communicate this in a way that feels like it's in high integrity with my customer? Because we live in a world, especially with online marketing, where it's all the big orange buttons that say claim your spot, one spot left. And you always think, the customer's probably thinking, is there really one spot left? Because if they've been in this game a while, they're like, I'm so tired of being.
You got to give legitimate reasons, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how you assess where the audience is going. Like if you're playing a game of chess, you can think a few moves ahead. That's kind of necessary to be a good chess player. How do you assess where your business is going, and how do you be 10 steps ahead?
Well, one really good thing that I learned, and I learned this from a futurist named Faith Popcorn, is that there are moments where the future of business is leaking into the present. And if you keep your eyes open, you'll start to see it. For example, there was a pivotal period in our recent history where we stopped getting a person on the phone. We started getting a robot. To me, that means that the workforce is going to be replaced, at least a large portion of it, by robots. something I'm thinking about is, okay, if we've got robots on the phone for the bank, we're probably going to have robots at Staples to pick up our favorite pair of, set of pencils. So another indicator, for example, is press. Seeing Tony Robbins in the past year on the cover of Fortune magazine, and I think it said CEO Whisperer or something like that. What it told me was that there's an appetite for mindset, there's an appetite for the new age thinking, and that I want to implement that into my product because I know that my generation really resonates with the spiritual side. And so one area where I've been 10 steps ahead is thinking, okay, I have a job hunting program, but it's not just about the outside results. It's about the experience they're having through it. And if we're living in a world where A, robots are replacing people, and I believe that that is going to continue, and B, that we've got spiritual leaders who are advising the chief executives, and that trickles down in an organization. So the first thought I'm having is I want to stay on top of that and make sure that there's some sort of mindset element in all of my teachings so that I'm not just throwing hard content at them all the time.
I think that's great. And that's something that here at Thriving Launch and all the Thriving Launchers, we're all on board with that. Not only do Kamala and I really resonate with that personally, we decided to take our podcast, the Thriving Launch Show, and make it really a show about this kind of more wholesome experience for the entrepreneur and a wholesome experience for people who are into self-help. So we bring guests like you on, and then we bring guests like Robert Kiyosaki and Jack Canfield and meditation experts and food experts, because yesterday we were doing this interview and our guest was talking about how being well in one area creates wellness in another. And I think you're really spot on there, Ashley.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. Wellness in one area creates wellness in another. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. I don't know if it happens by itself, right? I think, but where you focus is what expands, right?
This is definitely very true. And, as we're talking, I'm starting to think about your business started to grow. Did it get out of control? Like, what has been your process through that? Because we've talked to some people who have told us that they literally just had to say no more clients, that no more sales of any products, and we have to slow down. Where I've talked to other people where they just crash and burn because they just keep going. Tell me a little bit about that process for yourself.
I love that question because I think I can so relate to that. And I think that when you have a little carrot in front of you, it's easy to kind of want to chase this ever elusive carrot of success. But I think people who can really hold their boundary and say, enough, I'm going to pause here. I want to do this right. Those are the people who it's a long-term strategy. I think exploding is a short-term strategy and it's not sustainable. And so I love that. I think my experience with scaling was one where I was iterating on an evergreen automated webinar, and it was a really challenging experience for me. I'd hired just about anyone you could really think of in this business who has done evergreen funnels well. I'd hired them to talk to me and watch my presentation and give me advice on it. And what I found at the end of the day is that you have to listen to yourself. And that most of the time in business and in life, we're looking for answers we already have the answer to, but we either don't like our answer, and so we don't want to listen to it, or it's inconvenient in some way. So with me, in my case, my answer within myself was, I need to slow down. I felt that inside of myself, but it seemed too good. Like, I'm scaling, there's cash flow, things are going so well. I've got thousands of people joining my course. Why would I slow down, right? But you've got to, because at the end of the day, you have to give a damn about your customers. And a lot of people, I think, it's like we're one sale away from our next high. And it's like, you can't be that way. These are real people who are buying real products. And if you're going to scale so fast that you can't even have good customer support for them, you don't even have time to train people, you don't even have, like, another step is your legal agreements, having good legal in place. I think a good working relationship starts with good paperwork. And I think if you don't have that in place, that's a sign that you need to get your legal locked up before you move up. So these are all some pieces that really put pressure on me to say, no, you know what? Everybody's looking at me saying this business is crushing it. Keep going. And I said to myself, I don't want to go to bed like that, because at the end of the night, it's just you in your bed and you have to feel good about yourself. And I don't feel good if I don't have good customer support or good legal in place and all of those key elements.
I'm wondering if your experience in working in the Pentagon and being a leader has shaped your ability to see these things and have the foresight and insight to grow a business like this?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't from an intelligence standpoint. I was more logistics and operations, so I was never out in the field collecting intelligence and spying on people. But I do think that being around so much focus on justice perhaps played a role in my desire to really show up in this space in a way that I'm proud. And I just think that's so priceless. And I think you're so right that being in a world where, my first career in counterterrorism was about saving and protecting people. So of course it's no surprise that when I'm selling something on the internet, I don't want to feel like I'm duping anybody. And I think anyone who has an online business has learned by now that customers have their guard up. Like they contact you with issues, and a lot of the time it's crystal clear that they've been burned before. And if they hadn't, they wouldn't be talking to you like that, So definitely, I want to impress and surprise people with the positive nature of their experience with us.
I think a lot of it's about creating connection and
Yeah.
helping people feel like you care about them and that you're speaking directly to them, not just a mass audience. And I think that all plays a role in people putting that guard down so they do feel that connection. What else do you find is essential in growing and scaling a business?
I think listening to criticism, that's probably one of the hardest things that I've learned, is to listen to the critics. And of course, there are some where there's just nothing of value that they have to say. And it's like, all right, have a good day. Thanks for sharing, But I think a lot of the time criticism is such a gem. And obviously it doesn't feel like it, because we all want a gold star sticker any day of the week for our businesses. But I was so criticized on my first webinar I ever did. And it was because I had hired so many people to help me craft this and put it together. I like connection. I don't think about sales. And so I had to hire a lot of people to help me really put it in a way where I was also selling my product. Because, God knows you got to do that. And what I found was that there wasn't enough content in it. It was really just pitchy. And I felt it inside of myself, but I just didn't trust myself because I thought, you know what? I'm hiring these leaders. They've got to know better than I do. Even though it feels this way, it's got to be that way for the customer. They would know better than I do. And I got torched. Not just in the chat box, but people will post on the internet about it. And it was like my first webinar I'd ever done. And at first I put myself into a victim mode of, oh my gosh, I can't believe how harsh people are. And then I just thought, you know what, I've got to own this. I got to look at every single piece of feedback in that chat box, and I need to take it as a gift. I need to take it to grow. And I started writing down all of the feedback I was getting negative, and I started testing how I could go forward and implement their feedback. Which is, another thing is testing. Nobody gets successful without testing. I think that there's an infection in online marketing where, especially when you're new, people think it's one and done. You set it up and you hit it and you quit it, with your online funnels. But it's not. It's an iterative process. And I think part of that is listening to those critics so that you can implement and be better. And I think that it could be easy to be lazy and just say, wow, this is working. I'm going to throw some more cash at it and just make some more sales. But for me, I have been on such a mission ever since those critics came around to really stand in such a powerful place within myself where I want to feel like any criticism, I could look at it and be like, that's not true. I've really done a good job here. And until I feel 100% that way, which I'm really at that point right now, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep iterating. I'm going to keep testing. I'm going to keep listening to those critics.
I've also found that criticism is really, it's actually healthy as long as we don't get too emotionally involved in it. I recently did a project where a few people had some criticisms, and they publicly didn't say it in such a nice way. But I looked at those criticisms and I was like, this doesn't feel very good. But a few people commented with something similar, and then some other people, really liked it. And what I did with that information is I looked at what some of the criticism was, and I was like, okay, I can tweak this. I can make it better. And I went back and shared it somewhere else. And it was even more powerful with that community and that audience. But the change that happened was from the audience, where there was some criticism. When I made those changes, it totally shifted everything. And it also reminds me, Kamala, of our interview the other day, that if you guys have seen the movie Foxcatcher, it's an awesome movie. Mark Schultz is one of the characters that's played by Channing Tatum. Well, we had Mark Schultz on the show, and Mark is an two-time Olympic gold wrestler. And he was amazing to talk to. And one of the things that he said is, you're going to learn the most from your losses. It's your losses where you really can come out to be a champion. And that's what you're talking about.
So true. It is so true. And you hear it all the time. You see it on bumper stickers and all the like. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel that way. And I think that's what's the real test for how you're going to succeed in your emotional fitness, to keep playing the game. Because throwing in the towel, I mean, it can be a relief. Sometimes quitting is glorious. But if you really want to build something that pays for your life and makes a difference in other people's lives, and one thing you're talking about with critics, another thing that made me think about is how important it is to honor people's time. If you have a free guide, a free report, a free webinar, realize that that's an hour of people's time. And I don't know about you, but I value my time, and I'm guessing you do too. You've got a busy podcast, you've got so many guests. You've got it. And any time you're not working, you want to be with your family or the people you love or with yourself. And for somebody to surrender a second of their time or even their email address, you want to go into it thinking, well, I need to provide more value than they're giving me with that email address. And we all know in online marketing that an email address is a lot of value.
Before we kind of close out today, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what some of your tips are, the things that we absolutely need to keep in mind when we're looking ahead in our business and we're scaling.
I think overseas hires have completely transformed my business. And anyone who isn't looking into overseas, I so recommend it. If you have anything online, even customer support. And I personally recommend, I think, the Philippines. And I know a lot of people are into that right now.
Kamala and I totally love it.
We have our whole team there. We are so thrilled with the quality of work we get.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure, Thriving Launchers will make sure to include links at Thriving Launch on how you can hire a team as well, because everybody needs it. And we want to make it easy for you.
And we'll include some resources for that as well. Go ahead, Ashley.
No, that's just been probably the biggest game changer for the entire business, has been the talent I found overseas. And I love the Philippines because their culture is just so high integrity. I trust these people that I've hired out there so much. They want to grow. And you can get out there for $5 to $12 an hour what you can get here for $100 an hour, or $50 an hour. And so when I was starting to scale up and I couldn't yet afford the $100 an hour hire, I just thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to get the support I need? And, Q overseas hires completely shifted my business. So if you're not on that right now, I just so recommend to start researching hiring virtual assistants in the Philippines. It's a game changer.
That piece too about the level of integrity, it's been really phenomenal. We had someone, we've had some staff that are doing amazing work. We've tried out a few people too, because in order to get hired by us, we hire you for like an hour or two so you can do some work and we can see how much it took you to do that and how well you took direction and all of that. And we've had some responses where we wrote somebody and said, hey, this wasn't up to par for what we're looking for, but we really appreciate your time or something of that sort. And one girl wrote us and said, please don't pay me, I don't feel like I've done the work properly for you. I don't want to get paid. We had someone else write us and say, I'm sorry that I failed you. And when we had to write her back and say, no, you didn't fail us. Like, it just wasn't what we're looking for, but you did a great job. But this is the level of integrity that we found. And it's been a really great experience. I think that's a fantastic tip that you've given, along with all the other tips, because if you're growing a business, you got to make sure that all the tires are on, the team is firing full cylinders, and you're working Kamala and I are in a process of growing, and it's been incredible, but it's also been quite a process of finding new energy and finding more resourcefulness than we've ever had before.
Yes. And one just extra tip when it comes to hiring overseas is one question to always ask is to make sure that they have a good power grid. Get clear on what location they're in, because there's certain areas in the Philippines where their internet will be an issue for your business. So definitely make sure to ask about that.
All right, Ashley, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Kamala, do you want to close us out?
When growing and scaling and moving your business to the next level, I would love for all of us to just take these tips to our hearts because they're so powerful. And thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on and helping thriving launchers grow and scale.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
If you've ever had a challenge talking about sex with your partner, or you want to become more open around sexuality and intimacy, be sure to listen to our next episode with Reed Mahalko.